Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to my second live broadcast. I appreciate you showing up. I'm always excited to share some of the information that I have with you. Last week I covered the real reason why it is that we struggle with our health and our wellness. And it has nothing to do with, character defects or lack of discipline or motivation or any of those things. Those things are factors but not causes. What it really has to do with is something called evolutionary mismatch. And evolutionary mismatch explains that for millions of years as a species, we evolved and adapted in conditions of scarcity. And so we developed and adapted traits and characteristics that enabled us to cope with conditions of scarcity. But our modern environment, our industrialized modern environment, is one of abundance, and we have not adapted effectively to deal and cope with conditions of abundance and industrialization. So our behavior is mismatched with our environment. So that was last week. So this week, what I want to talk about is why we overeat, because we all do it. Now, first of all, I want to say that this is by no means going to be an exhaustive list. There are going to be plenty of other reasons why it is that we overeat that I'm not covering today. And the other thing is I want to make sure that people understand I'm not talking about eating disorders. That's a topic that is much better addressed by somebody with specific knowledge in that area, and that's not me. What I'm going to be talking about are just the kind of common reasons for those of us who overeat in general. And just as a side note, whenever I'm talking about weight or weight loss or weight gain or weight maintenance or nutrition, I'm always going to be talking about it from a context of health and wellness, not from a context of focusing on aesthetic or cosmetic results. So, if you're looking to lose like those last 4 pounds to look good in a bikini, that's fine. I don't really care about that. That's not my thing. I'm always going to be speaking more to health and wellness as a general concept for the improvement of your life and longevity and so on and so forth. So today I'm going to talk about overeating, and we all overeat. I overeat. All you have to do is think back to Thanksgiving. Even though I don't eat meat anymore, the fake meat products that are out there nowadays, while I am rather certain they're not all that good for you, are pretty good. I mean, they taste pretty good. So I attack Thanksgiving like it's a full contact event. So we all overeat, and there are a variety of different reasons for it. And I'm going to dig into some of those right now. Now, if you have any questions or if you have any comments or if there are any technical issues with this broadcast that I don't know about, just post that information in the comments section, and I'll either deal with it at the end of this broadcast, or I'll answer those questions when we go offline. So let's talk about 7 reasons why we overeat, and we all do overeat. There are a lot of different factors that drive this. I'm just going to cover kind of 7 of the most common ones, and I do have some notes here, so if you see me glancing away from the camera every once in a while, it's because I'm making sure that I stay on point here. Number 1 reason why we overeat: portion sizes. So portion sizes have increased I think it's 138% since the 1970s. And research shows that if it's in front of us, we'll eat it. So if you've got a giant portion of food in front of you, you'll eat it. It makes sense. Think about it. When we talk about going to restaurants, or we talk about having gone to a restaurant, we never say, that place was awesome. It had these really small, reasonable portion sizes. We never say that. What we say is, dude, I ate like a 96-ounce porterhouse steak, or it had giant portions of pasta. We're always looking for more. More is better. We're Americans. That's how we're wired. So portion sizes are a big factor. There was some research done that was really clever, where they had a bunch of people around a table eating soup. Some of the people were eating out of normal bowls, and some of the people were eating out of bowls that were actually unknown to the people eating out of the bowls. They had a tube feeding through the bottom of the soup bowl. And the researchers just kept refilling the bowl and refilling the bowl and refilling the bowl. And what they discovered is that the people who had the refillable bowls ate like 73% more food than the people that had the normal goals. So the research indicates, look, if it's in front of us, we'll eat it. So if you have a giant portion size, you'll finish it. So that's reason number one, is portion sizes. Number two, dining out with others and distracted eating. I'm putting both of those things together because they kind of go hand in hand. When we eat with others, when we go out to dine with others, when we have people over to our house, whatever the scenario may be, we eat more food than we would if we weren't in a group of people. And the reason for that is that we are very easily influenced by the behavior of other people. We would all like to believe that we are impervious to, being influenced by the behavior of others. We're not. Our social brains develop specifically in a way for us to be able to connect with other people and cooperate, and we have a desire to fit in and to conform. So when you're sitting around a table with a bunch of other people who are just eating and eating and eating, you're going to be influenced by that behavior, and you are going to eat more too. Now, the irony is that everybody's just cueing off of each other's behavior around the table. So everybody's sending signals out to everybody else to just keep eating at that table. But that's one of the main reasons why we overeat when we're with other people, is because behaviorally we are impacted by other people and what other people are doing. So if other people are, packing away the food, you're going to pack away the food too. And then distracted eating. If you're just kind of having conversation and drinking your wine and having a good time and just mindlessly eating, you're going to continue to overeat. I do that. I'm the king of overeating with regard to distracted eating in particular. For as long as I can remember, when I read, which is pretty much every single day, I will grab a bag of sunflower seeds or peanuts or nuts or something like that, and I'll just mindlessly kind of eat while I'm reading. So distracted eating and eating with other people is reason number two as to why it is that we overeat. Number three, alcohol. I mean, when has alcohol ever been a performance enhancing drug? Alcohol suppresses our inhibitory systems. So it lowers our self-control. So, it's no wonder that it causes us to overeat among a lot of other things that alcohol causes us to do. But alcohol is a big reason why we're going to overeat, because when you're with other people and you're drinking your wine, drinking your beer, it's going to suppress your inhibitory systems. And although the warning bells may kind of go off for you, you're going to be less inclined to care about them, and you're going to eat more. Next is willpower, limited willpower. Willpower is just not what we think it is. Research is very clear on this. Willpower is finite. You do not have an unlimited amount of willpower. There's a guy named Roy Baumeister who's made a career researching willpower, and what he's discovered over the course of time is that willpower is a finite resource, and it's what we use whenever we want to force ourselves to do something that we don't want to do, or force ourselves not to do something that we do want to do. And every time you fall back upon your willpower to get yourself to do something that you do or do not want to do, you draw it down, you deplete it. And if you do that enough throughout the course of the day, you'll run out of willpower. Think of it like a smartphone battery. You get up in the morning, your phone's all charged up, but as you use the battery throughout the course of the day, you draw the power down as you're making phone calls and you're checking email and texting and opening up apps and so on and so forth. You're depleting your battery with regard to your smartphone. And that's the same thing that occurs with your willpower. So it should never be your first line of resistance. You should never rely on willpower as a way of kind of gutting it out or hoping to avoid behavior that's not healthy. You should always work more on designing an ecosystem around yourself or an environment that's going to promote health and well-being, and leave willpower as a line of last resort. So number 5 reason why we overeat is hormones. And I'm not an endocrinologist, so I'm not going to dig into this really deeply. But our appetite is controlled by complex mechanisms that involve a lot of different hormones. You've got cortisol and leptin and ghrelin, and you've got estrogen and you've got progesterone. And this can easily be thrown out of balance, which will cause hunger and cravings. So the things that can throw your hormones out of balance, and there are a lot of them, but are things like sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation has been shown to throw your hormones out of whack, and that's why a lot of the time when you're feeling sleep deprived, you're hungry and you crave energy-dense foods, fatty foods, sugary foods. Stress can throw off your hormone balance. And then obviously if you're a woman, you know that if you're having your menstrual cycle, that can bring about cravings as well. So hormones are a big factor in why it is that we overeat. Number 6 is engineered foods. And this is one of my favorite topics, because the industrialized food system that we live in is pretty antithetical to everything involved with our health. There are companies out there, the big food processing companies, the General Mills and companies like that. They hire food scientists whose job is to specifically formulate foods that stimulate the reward pathways in your brain. And it's a concept called the bliss point. And so they're always searching for this perfect balance of fat, sugar, and salt that will literally trigger the same reward pathways in your brain as cocaine, heroin, porn, gambling, booze, and nicotine. So when it comes to industrialized food, those companies are making fools out of us. They are specifically engineering food that will impact our biochemistry or our neurochemistry in a way that will make us want more of their foods. So we're really their guinea pigs. So industrialized foods are one of the biggest reasons why we overeat, because they stimulate the reward pathways in our brain. But the other thing is that we are not biologically adapted to cope with high doses of refined sugar or refined flour, industrialized foods. And there's a kind of a complicated insulin response that takes place whenever we eat high doses of industrialized food with the sugar in it and so on and so forth, that ultimately results in us being hungry again. So industrialized foods are one of the big reasons why we overeat, engineered foods. And then lastly, evolutionary science. Now this is a concept that I love to talk about, because if we take a look at where we came from and how we adapted and evolved as a species, it goes a long way to explaining why it is that we behave the way that we do now in our current environment. So we evolved and adapted for millions of years in an environment of scarcity. So calories were hard to come by. So when we came across an abundance of food, if you're out hunting and gathering and you come across a fig tree that's full of food, it would have made sense to eat every fig on the tree, because you don't know where your next meal is coming from, resources are scarce, survival is based upon consuming enough calories to make it to the next day. And so that would have been a smart thing to do 50,000 years ago. You come across an animal that's been killed, you come across a fig tree, you're going to eat whatever food that you can find, and you're going to eat in abundance. You'll overeat if necessary so that you can store enough calories, which is energy, to make it to the next day. And if you think about it this way, if you were to be living in extreme poverty, and I'm talking extreme poverty, the kind where you don't know if you've got enough money to buy food the next day, and money just started raining down from the sky, and it was free. Money just started raining down from the sky. You're living in conditions of extreme poverty. It would be smart for you to gather up as much of that money as you could, put it in backpacks and buckets, and keep that, because it would be a survival mechanism. It would enable you to make sure that you would have the resources necessary to buy food the next day and the day after that. So that would have been a very, very smart thing to do if you lived in conditions of extreme poverty. That's the same thing as the environment that we evolved into for millions of years. It was an environment of scarcity. So if the opportunity presented itself for us to eat abundant calories, we had the instinct to do so. That was smart. So that's one of the reasons why we overeat. The other thing is that evolutionarily we have a craving for energy-dense foods, and those would be sugary foods and fatty foods. Now, in the natural indigenous environment, there are virtually no foods that mimic the high dose refined sugar response of industrialized foods, except for honey and potatoes or tubers. And those were hard to come by. So if hunter-gatherers ever did come by honey, it was a prized possession. It was a great food because it's very energy dense. There's a lot of natural sugar in it. And if you came across an animal, we would have the tendency to eat the fattier parts of the animal. We didn't eat steak. We would eat the brains. We would eat the marrow. We would eat the organ meats because they were much more energy dense and nutritious, as opposed to now where we eat the steak. So we have this natural inclination toward energy dense foods because, again, having evolved in conditions of scarcity, if the opportunity presents itself for you to consume foods that are high calorically, it would be a smart thing to do as far as survival is concerned. So those are 7 reasons why it is that we overeat. And now I want to circle back to 7 kind of steps that you can take maybe to counteract some of these inclinations to overeat. Let's talk about portion sizes. So research shows that we will eat whatever is in front of us, right? So if we have giant portions, we're going to eat from edge of the plate to edge of the plate. We're going to eat everything that's on that plate. So if that's a behavioral characteristic, then the only way to limit that instinct is to make the edges of the plate smaller. Eat off of smaller plates. Eat out of smaller bowls. Present yourself with a smaller portion so that it's self-limiting. Because if you leave it up to yourself, you're going to pile as much food as you can onto that plate and then you're going to finish it. So, look, this isn't a revolutionary idea. We've talked about using smaller plates. People have talked about that for a long time. Using smaller plates is a strategic thing to do to avoid overeating, simply because it limits the amount of food that is in your eyesight. And if you've got less food in your eyesight, you're gonna eat less food. The other thing is to, if you're cooking at home, serve up your small portion on a small plate and then immediately pack up the rest and put it in the fridge. If you're at a restaurant, I've seen people just immediately when they get served their meal, have the server package half of it up. So they'll only eat half of it and they'll take half of it home. So those are a couple potential strategies. They're not very sexy, but they are effective. Dining with others. Now, here are a couple suggestions. You're not going to like them, but they actually do work. Number 1 is to eat before you go out. So if you're going to be eating with friends and you know that you have a tendency to overeat when you go to eat with friends, eat before you go out. And that way you won't have, your appetite won't be out of control and you won't make a bad impulse decision when you go out. You'll already be somewhat full and you can afford to kind of order a smaller meal. The other thing is to research the restaurant in advance, check out the menu online, and make a decision online before you go to the restaurant. Because if you have that decision pre-made, again, it will help you to avoid being influenced by other people. Because if you go without having a game plan, and you see everybody else ordering the 4-pound lobster and the hubcap full of fettuccine Alfredo, and you're sitting on, you don't know what you're going to order, it's easy to be influenced by that and then make a rash decision and order something that wouldn't be as healthy or would be more food than you want to eat. So if you decide in advance, then you come armed with an idea and then you leave, you avoid the temptation of making a bad snap decision because you will be influenced by other people. The other thing is order first. If at all possible, be the first one to order. If you're the 5th or 6th or 7th or 8th or 9th, again, we are influenced by the behavior of other people. If you don't believe that, ask yourself what car you drive and why. Chances are you drive a car that's more expensive than it needs to be. We are easily influenced by the behavior of other people. So if you're going to be ordering food and you want to order healthy, don't be the last person in line. Be the first person in line. Alcohol. Man, I don't have a lot to offer on this one except to say stop drinking. That's a terrible suggestion because it's not very practical, but it's really difficult to overcome behavior when your natural behavior is being unnaturally suppressed by alcohol. It's just a hard one to come by. So we all leave home with the best of intentions. We think, I'm going to hang out with my buddies, I'm going to have a beer, I'm going to go home. Next thing you know, you're elbows deep into a bunch of potato skins that you weren't planning on. That's normal. That's what alcohol makes you do. It makes you do all manner of, crimes and misdemeanors. So I don't have anything great to offer on the alcohol front. I stopped drinking 12 years ago because anybody who knew me from the 90s can tell you that I didn't make the best decisions when I was drinking. So I would just recommend be careful with alcohol, limit your alcohol. The other thing is, there is this thing called the 30-day alcohol-free challenge. Now, I don't have a moral position on whether you drink or not. I'm just thinking about weight and health and so on and so forth. I don't know anything about this challenge, but I do know that I've got a buddy who did this 30-day alcohol-free challenge, and it changed his life. He lost like 50 pounds, and it really, really helped him turn around his nutrition and so on and so forth. So if anyone's interested, I can put that link in the comments section. So booze, that's a tough one. The next thing we talked about was willpower, and how the lack of willpower can lead to overeating. So let's talk about willpower. Willpower will let you down if you rely on it too heavily. So the best approach is don't use willpower as a first line of defense. Use it as a last line of defense. So what do you use as a first line of defense is designing your environment. Design an environment that promotes the sort of outcome that you're looking for. So I think of it as an ecosystem that you build around yourself, or a snow globe. You live in a snow globe. What do you want to have in that snow globe? If you jam that ecosystem or that snow globe full of healthy things, you're much more likely to promote a healthy outcome. Whereas if you're living in a snow globe that's full of, unhealthy things and toxic things, you're going to be unhealthy. So there's a concept called behavioral architecture or choice architecture, in which you actually design your physical environment in ways that will help promote the outcome that you're trying to accomplish. So in other words, if you're trying to eat healthy, you gotta have unhealthy food, take it out of the house, because if it's there, you'll eat it. If there are people in your life who are unhealthy, I'm not telling you not to hang out with them, but you might want to ask, try to create conditions under which, when you're interacting with them, you will be able to manage your health and your wellness. Let's see. Don't have unhealthy foods at work. That is a big one, because I'll hear that a lot of time from people like, well, my coworkers bring unhealthy food into work, or the salespeople bring in food, donuts for all of the staff. Yeah, that's tough, man. I mean, it's hard when it's there. If you're going to have snacks at work, make sure they're healthy snacks. And if you're going to have snacks, make sure they're outside of arm's reach. There were studies that showed that there was a jar of candy on top of a reception desk. And when the researchers simply put a lid on top of the jar, it cut down consumption of the candy inside that jar by like 60%. Anytime you can add a friction point or a speed bump between you and something that you don't want to do, it's going to help you avoid doing that specific thing. It's something, there's a guy named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He calls it activation energy, which is the amount of energy that it takes to actually undertake an activity. So if you can do things like that, if you can keep foods outside of your availability, if you can put a cover on top of foods that you don't want to eat as easily, if you can design your environment, your physical environment, so that it's filled with healthy things, healthy food, healthy water, healthy people, healthy mindset, healthy reminders, we are incredibly impacted by the cues and the conditions in our environment in ways that we don't even know about, that are unconscious. So instead of relying on willpower, try to design an ecosystem that you live in that promotes health instead of illness. This is a whole workshop. We could talk about environmental design for 5 hours. I'm not going to do that. I'm just touching on it. But that's a smart thing to do. Don't rely on willpower. Try to design an effective, healthy environment for yourself. As far as hormones, make sure you get plenty of sleep. Follow sleep hygiene practices. Just Google the term sleep hygiene. Try to get ample sleep, 7 to 8 hours a day. That'll help with hormone regulation. Don't lose too much weight too fast, because losing too much weight too fast sends an alarm bell to your metabolism, to your system saying, hey, something's wrong, food's not available, and it will prompt you to want to recover the lost weight and the lost calories by overeating. So don't try to lose, don't diet, number one, and dieting meaning severe calorie restriction, and don't lose too much weight too quickly. Eat natural, healthy foods, and that will regulate your hormone balance. Women, during times of the month when they're having their menstrual cycle, you can eat a lot of food that have a lot of fiber in them, and that'll help you stay full. So there's just a couple tips on the hormone front. Again, avoid industrialized foods. That was one of the things we talked about as far as being a key factor for overeating. Industrialized foods will make you eat more, so try to eat natural foods, fruits, vegetables, plant-based materials. Limit your exposure to refined sugars and refined flours. If you eat meat, eat animals that were fed plants. It's going to be much healthier for you than industrialized meat. And consider adding more omega-3s. Have a plan of attack by working with somebody who, let me see, I keep going in and out here, so I'm not sure if I lost part of this video. But anyway, work with a professional who can help you design an effective nutrition, exercise, sleep, and behavior management protocol. Because a professional's job is really just to use a proven methodology for rolling out a big long carpet. And your job is to stay on that carpet. And you're not going to stay on there, permanently. You're going to go off and on. But if that carpet's always there, then your job is basically just to find your way back to that carpet every time that you get lost. And we all get lost. The people who are most successful when it comes to managing health and wellness are not the ones who are perfect. Nobody's going to be perfect. The ones who are the most successful are the ones who find their way back to that path the quickest. So by working with a professional, you enable yourself to have a clearly drawn plan of action. Your job is to do your best to stay on that plan. You're not going to, so that plan being in place enables you to find your way back to a path that's gonna help you. That's it. That was longer than I wanted to go, but there's a lot of information here. Try some of those strategies. Some of them are going to work, some of them are not going to work. Pick and choose the ones that you feel are going to benefit you. If you have any comments or if you have any questions, just post them in the comment section below, and I'll be happy to reach out and answer those. If you have any ideas or any research that you think is in opposition to what I'm saying, let me know. Post it in the comments section. I'm not invested in being right. I'm just invested in trying to help you with managing your health and wellness as much as I can. And I'm always happy to look at new information. And I'm more than welcome to be wrong. If it's in the spirit of learning what we need to learn to help us all become a little bit healthier. If this was beneficial to you at all, please share this video with people that you think might benefit from it. I'm going to go live on Friday at 12 o'clock to talk about how exercise is unnatural. So we'll dig into that the next time. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.